Okay, we'll go ahead and resume in about 30 seconds. I sincerely apologize for the delay today. There's no excuse for it. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and just get right to it here. So the presentation was provided. We started with comments from Councilman Gallego. Then the presentation. I'll ask my colleagues if there are any other questions or comments on this item before we go to the cards. Okay, so we'll go to the first, Nicolas Cortez. Welcome, Mr. Cortez.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be among a group of enthusiastic people here. I am here to represent Nuestro Barrio, District 8. I was looking at the headings out there where the Aviation wants to get the community's input in this project. I thank you for that, and our interests and our what we need there is we want to go on with the project, but you need to start thinking about number one, you should make my community, the homeowners, the ones that have been there, help you build this city with their taxpayers' dollars, help them to upgrade their homes so they can fit into your plan. I know you have money out there somewhere. You're a multi-million-dollar franchise or whatever you want to call yourselves. I don't hate you. I congratulate you. You went to school. Some of your parents had to sacrifice, like mine did, to get you to where you are. And we're just forgetting all of that. Some of us didn't even grow up here. They just come here and say, this is what you need to do. It looks good on paper. There's no feelings. There's nothing to think about the history of my house. Every house has a history where I come from. And that's why I'm here asking you guys, you people, my friends, to make the community, existing community right now, first, and then proceed with your plans. Maybe by then you can start making more multi-million dollars. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you,
have to
Mr.
go to work.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez, for being here. Carlos Avila, and Mr. Avila, Paul Moreno has donated time to you as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee here. I am here in representation for the Nuestro Barrio Community Association. I'd like to read a letter here and present some information to you before we go into it any further. This is, first, thank you for the opportunity to submit to the Nuestro Barrio Community Land Reuse Core Village concept. While it is not complete, it is accurately captures and reflects the requests and needs of the community. The Nuestro Barrio Community and Neighborhood Association addresses and only speaks for the central area of the City Aviation Land Reuse Project. I was hoping that in part of the presentation today that it would have identified the north, central, and south zone areas to elaborate more specifically on here. I'll go further, and I'm going to concentrate mainly on the central core area, which is south of the railroad tracks to the Maricopa Freeway, 7th Street to the west, and 16th Street to the east. That is the identified central zone area that is identified in the land reuse. Over the past decades and a half, the families in the central area have experienced an emotional fatigue, weariness, and stress, while the City of Phoenix Voluntary Acquisition VARS program provided families with an opportunity to relocate and also purchase vacant lots. The program acquired a total of 560 parcels, homes, and vacant lots in the central area. Now, another thing that was not identified here tonight or today is 743 parcels that are on the land reuse subject here today. So of the 560 parcels in the central area, accounted for 75.4% of the total overall parcels purchased versus 6.3% of the north area. The north area you will find is north of the railroad tracks to Washington, from 7th Street to 24th Street. And 18.3% for the south area. The approximate remaining 410 qualified parcels in the central area that met the VARS program guidelines did not sell to the City of Phoenix VARS program. The City of Phoenix land reuse proposal has not identified the best interest of the Nuestro Barrio community in the central area. It is the opinion of the families and communities represented today by the Nuestro Barrio Neighborhood Association that the land reuse proposal presented today by the City Aviation representatives is not in the best interest of the families, communities that still live in the community. Our opposition has been formally stated on numerous occasions. One such occasion was April 10th, 2017, at the Central Village Planning Committee meeting. So there has been, in the process over years and documentation, that this is not suitable for the plan for the Nuestro Barrio community. On June 2002, VARS program was approved by the City of Phoenix Council for approximately 1,100 qualified parcels. On August 2008, the City of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport was required to submit an inventory of the noise land reuse acquired by VARS parcels in the Federal Aviation Administration. As of August 15, 2008, the VARS documented the purchase of only 56 residential parcels. On February 5, 2009, the Nuestro Barrio community became impatient and tired with the VARS program progress and met with Councilman Michael Johnson to address concerns to show slow movement of acquisitions and plan for revitalization of the Nuestro Barrio neighborhoods. Existing infrastructure needed immediate attention and improvements for remaining residents still living in the neighborhoods. Councilman Johnson's response was not to do anything until the VARS program ended. The VARS program would come to a rest on June 2016 after last demolition of an acquired historic home acquired by the VARS program that remained standing for 10 years, only to be demolished without interest of the City of Phoenix for saving the home. Discussion today regarding the land reuse parcels has always been a topic of concern with the Nuestro Barrio community and the City of Phoenix. Back on July 15, 1992, City of Phoenix Planning Commission Chairman Standage Bear addressed problems of spot zoning and lot of land use problems to transition zoning parcels under the Nuestro Barrio plan. On July 22nd,
We
yes.
need to wrap up, sir.
The Phoenix Planning Commission again met regarding the Nuestro Barrio plan. The implementation of this plan requires coordination among the community residents, private organizations, and City of Phoenix. The plan should be periodically reviewed and updated in order to respond to the change issues and conditions of the neighborhood. The importance of the communication to work what is best for the Nuestro Barrio community has not been recognized. The
Mr.
residents
Avalos.
that still remain, we look forward to working with the aviation and look forward to coming up with what's best for the community. Thank you. I also want to submit these plans of what the proposal, again, for the Nuestro Barrio plan, if I can.
There's 4 copies here.
Thank you, Mr. Avila. All right, the next speaker is Pat Gurule.
Goulet.
Laura told me how to pronounce that too.
Goulet, thank you.
Goulet. I apologize, Ms.
Good
Goulet.
morning. My name is Patricia M. Goulet, landowner representing Father Albert Braun Veterans Memorial District. Chairman, Councilman Valenzuela, and members of the Aviation Subcommittee, Councilwoman Gallegos. At the February 13th and April 10th, 2017 Central Village meetings, City of Phoenix residents voiced their concerns and requested a moratorium on the land reuse final report. The following annotated statements paraphrase these concerns and to date lack of action. Point 1, the land reuse is a land grab, causing blight of the area, making it ugly, like a bomb went off. Continuous concern stated the lack of transparency. Community voiced oppositions to options A, B, and C, which were not shown here. They do not address concerns of the residents that are still in the area. Fears of the use of eminent domain were expressed, removing existing residents in the area, especially in the proposed midterm 2021-2025 commercial and industrialization of the area. It was stated that options don't allow the residential neighborhoods to remain. Residents should have equal consideration for future development. A Central Village member stated or requested that the Aviation Department mail letters to those displaced to assess their interest of moving back into the proposed developed area, giving them the right of first refusal. Instead of the proposed urban farms, the greater emphasis should be directed toward the development of workforce affordable housing as proposed by the community. A continuous lack of coordination with the FAA in the reintroduction of residential in the core central area. Action needs to be taken now, not later. And I see it up there, it says forward the land reuse strategy to FAA. Well, there needs to be coordination with the community before that occurs. The designated cultural corridor in the document diminishes and fragments the historic relevance of the already existing historic barrios, Sacred Heart Parish neighborhoods in the Salt River Flood Plan. The final land reuse states 3 goals, and they're very impressive goals. But to date, some lack of action has made them look like they're rhetorical goals. They do not reflect the concerns and the input repeatedly stated by the area residents adversely affected by these inactions. There is still a lot to be addressed and resolved before this can be considered a viable plan. In addition, the final report is very cumbersome and challenging to download. The illustrations and narratives are difficult to read, and I'd like to ask, is this PowerPoint going to be included into the final report when we get some answers? That would be a question. There needs to be a more direct outreach to the community and an extensive assessment of how this proposed project will directly affect the quality of life. We feel this is not a relevant demonstration of an egalitarian process where haste for this project, at times lack of transparency, takes precedence over the well-being, respect, and the dignity of the impacted City of Phoenix residents. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you,
I have
ma'am.
some information.
Thank you very much. Dr. Juan Goulet?
So you got it.
Sure did.
Crazy.
Just a little graphic.
Okay.
Probably have to come closer.
Chairman Valenzuela and Vice Mayor and Councilman Gallegos, thank you for this opportunity as well. My name is Juan Gudrole, property owner representing the Father Albert Braun Veterans Memorial District. This proposal was submitted to the Mayor of Phoenix, Councilwoman Gallegos, and the Land Reuse Final Report. It was recently endorsed by the Unified Arizona Veterans, a consortium of 55 different veterans organizations. The Father Albert Braun Veterans Memorial District recognizes the iconic World War I, World War II hero and developer of the Sacred Heart Parish and barrios and neighborhoods on the Salt River floodplain, Father Albert Braun. It proposes to strengthen, stabilize the existing neighborhoods, creates a sense of identity, change perceptions, and expand economic opportunities. What you see here right now is just an abbreviated snapshot of the plan. It's more extensive than this, but because of the time, I'm going to go through this real quick. I'm going to highlight the historical relevance. That's been discussed a lot. It was discussed at the community meeting on Monday. We're looking at 16th Street to 7th Street. We've combined 2 aspects of this. An aspect of historical relevance by civic leaders. Everybody talked about civic leaders. Well, these barrios were the cradle of the Chicano movement in the 60s, and I was part of that, okay? You have over here on the north side of Buckeye Road on 7th Street, a present statue of Dolores Huerta. Over here on 10th Street, which leads right into Santa Rita Hall, a presence of Cesar Chavez. Over here on 16th Street, the first Hispanic representative on the city council and vice mayor of his time, Adam Diaz. That's the civic leaders. On the south side, a veterans presence. Specifically, what's unique to this is Congressional Medal of Honor recipients, and Patricia have met these families. On the south side of 7th Street, Jose Francisco Jimenez, Vietnam, 1969. over on 11th Street in front of Herrera School, Sylvester Herrera, World War II. Over on the right side off of 16th Street, I'll be real quick, Oscar Austin, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, Vietnam. He has commissioned in 2000 the USS Oscar Austin. By the way, he was a former classmate of mine, 1967, at Phoenix Union High School. And I'm going to wrap up real quick, sir. So the postulates that we're talking about here are that our program really provides a connectivity from the historic values, Sacred Heart Parish, Heritage Forum of Honor, and neighborhoods in the Salt River floodplain to the downtown Phoenix area and Sky Harbor Airport, provides that connectivity. It creates a realm, a public realm of retail, marketplace, public walking places, artist corridor, and celebrates the values. And that's what's being talking about here with the residents. The third thing, it creates a new economic stimulus engine, tourist destination, employment for the area. I'm going to wrap up by saying this is just a snapshot and abbreviation of our overall presentation. I presented that snapshot. I personally would welcome an invitation from any of you to meet with you to give you the overall extensive presentation. I have presented this to various council departments and things like this, and of course to the Unified Arizona Veterans. And one other thing, we want this to be included in our proposal that is in the land reuse, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Goulet. That is our last speaker for this item. This is not for action, it's just for informational and discussion. Any further questions or comments by my colleagues? We do have one more speaker. Mr. Abe Arvisu, if you could just be sure on your way out to fill out a card, please.
Abe Arvisu, I'm chairman of the board of the Braun Sacred Heart Center. As all of you are aware, we have been for over 30 years now working on this historic district that was mentioned today. Of course, this is not included in the land reuse. I want to make sure everybody understand there's two different things here. What we're doing is in the Walla project, which a lot of you know is from 16th Street East. And what was presented today has to do with anything on 16th Street West. So I want everybody to understand that we already have the Sacred Heart Church as a National Historic Site. We've already got that taken care of in 2012. So I want everybody to understand that if there's anything that goes on here, that we are included after all these years that we have worked so hard with so many people that are no longer there, so many people that have passed away, and so many people that have given us that they want us to continue this fight. And so I hope that there is no confusion here, the differences of two programs. And as you can see, these renderings that are included in this plan that include items east of 16th Street are not supposed to be there. Those are just renderings. They are not actually should be included or noted in this program. So I just want to make that very clear, and it's on the record that everything east of 16th Street is in the Walla project and what we've been working towards. And very quickly, I will state that as a former resident, I would not like to see anybody move back under the flight path, because I don't want them to have the horrors that we had when we grew up there. Also, maybe at another time when the decibels change at the 65 decibel line, maybe the city can revisit that and work with people to come back into the area. But I think it's very, very important to understand there is a problem here. If we start moving people back in, who gets first dibs in moving back in when I was forced out? My family was forced out. So who gets first choice? So it in itself creates a problem, and I think we should work through that. But I think this program has to go forward for the FAA to decide whether we're going to have that opportunity to do that or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that is our last speaker. Any further questions or comments, my colleagues? Thank you so much, Mr. Bennett and your team. And we look forward to having this discussion continue in the future. Thank you, Councilwoman Gallego. All right, so we will move on with the rest of our agenda. We have a consent agenda.
Minutes.
Wow, the minutes,
You
that's
need to
all.
start all over.
No, all right. Thank you for that point of clarification there. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes, of previous minutes.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I would move
The
consent
consent.
items 3 through 9.
Second.
So we are going to pull the 10th one off.
Right.
So there's a consent agenda for items 3 through 9. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we're moving on to item 10, request to issue RFP for security guard services.
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion for staff be allowed to continue with the extension so that we can send the RFP request back to them, have them, there were some questions raised in a letter I received. I'd like to have them review the qualifications for the RFP and bring that back at a later date, but the extension go forward.
Second.
Okay, the motion is clear to staff?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have no cards on this item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, item 11 and 12 are for information only, so if you have no questions, we can move on to item 13, which is continued to November.
Okay, sounds good. So items 11 and 12 are for information only. I do want to hear item 11, but it doesn't have to be today. So do we need a motion to continue that to next month's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, so we'll start with item 11. Motion to
Continue.
continue to the November 1st agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item 12 is for information only. Staff is on hand if we have any questions or comments. There are no cards on these items, by the way, from the public. Are we okay with moving forward to? Okay, thank you very much. Item 13, I believe that there is a request for continuance by staff to November 1st.
Need a motion? So I move it.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Item 14, Symphony Hall needs assessment. John Chan, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, the item before us, we are going to provide an overview of a recent needs assessment study that was conducted for Symphony Hall and seek your direction moving forward. So this past week, Symphony Hall celebrated its 45th anniversary. It was opened in 1972, and at that time, the hall was envisioned to be a center for cultural and theatrical performances for the city of Phoenix, and it has served in that capacity for the past 45 years. In 2005, the hall underwent an $18.5 million renovation in conjunction with the expansion of the Phoenix Convention Center. As part of the $18.5 million renovation of Symphony Hall, included a new entrance, ticket offices, expanded lobby, and a new audience chamber. The hall is home to 3 resident companies, the Phoenix Symphony, Ballet Arizona, and the Arizona Opera Company. And in addition to our 3 resident companies, Symphony Hall hosts a wide variety of additional public performances each year, including concerts, comedy shows, and award shows. So in 2015, based on feedback from our resident companies and from patrons of Symphony Hall, we received some feedback on some challenges with the acoustics of the hall and some potential for improving those acoustics and other improvements in the hall. So we commissioned an engineering study to look at some of the challenges with the hall And at this point in time, Kevin Mattingly is going to discuss some of the initial findings in the study.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. As John stated, in 2015, at the urging of our resident companies, we initiated a study for acoustical qualities of Symphony Hall. This study cost us about $125,000 and identified 3 key areas where we have the ability to upgrade Symphony Hall, and bring it up to industry standards. The first focused on acoustical improvements to the hall, not physical structural changes, but electrical enhancements, the use of the latest technology to improve the sound in the audience chamber and for the performers. Secondly, they examined the use of video equipment and what's called in the industry IMAG technology in order to bring the ability for companies and other performers to videotape and present their show on large video viewing screens. And finally, a look at the lobby itself, improvements that are needed there to allow the building to be essentially more usable and more attractive to companies, traveling companies, and other companies that might use the facility. We're here today with some recommendations, seeking your approval to re-engage this consultant team to review these recommendations. And you might ask why, after only 2 years, they would want to revisit those recommendations. And frankly, it's about the technology, which is moving so fast that we now know that what was recommended to us as state-of-the-art technology improvements just 2 years ago is no longer state-of-the-art. And so we're looking for updated recommendations in terms of the technology we would use in order to improve our acoustics. We want the latest technology. We don't want to be behind the curve there.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We have a question.
Sure.
When you write the contract for this, can you insert the latest technology but not define it, so that when you go through this long process, whatever you end up with is out of date?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Councilwoman Williams, yes, absolutely. We don't want to write it in a way that puts the recommendation in a box, but we do want to write it in such a way that we get the most reliable and current technology without quite being on the bleeding edge. But yes, we can do that.
What do you mean not quite on the leading edge?
Well, sometimes if you buy the latest and the greatest, all the bugs aren't shaken out yet. And we've learned we refer to it as the bleeding edge rather than the cutting edge, because very often the latest, greatest thing isn't quite settled down yet. So we want the most reliable, proven technology that's available to us, something that's been proven to work in other venues and across our industry, rather than jumping out into something brand new and being the beta test.
Yeah, but by the time you go through the entire city process, brand new is old.
Old, yeah.
Correct. Yes, we're aware of that, and actually that's the reason we're back after just 2 years ago getting recommendations. We're now going to be focusing on actual products and applications as opposed to the general direction to use electroacoustical equipment rather than just make physical changes.
Well, that was my original question, was do you have to specifically identify what that is?
No.
Or can you include in there, it has to be, what is at that time, the latest, greatest with an estimated cost approval?
At some point in time, when we go out and put the actual construction out to bid, we'll need to have a defined scope with specifications. So that would be later on in the process, as we get closer to the bid, where we'd have the final equipment specified.
Right. So as the third point on the screen indicates, the updating the project scope and obtaining cost estimates is also a part of what we're seeking to do with by re-engaging this consultant. So
So as indicated in the staff report.
I'm sorry, John,
Mr. Chair.
you want to ask a question
I'll
now?
ask, I'll wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, as stated in the staff report, the approximate range of costs for the scope of items identified in the study is in the $7 to $8 million range. At this point in time, there is no funding source identified, so one of the things that we would need to do moving forward is to identify potential funding sources once the final scope is finalized. And then the other thing that we would need to do is work with the resident companies in the contract to develop a schedule to determine if this is work that can be done during the off-season. So, from when the season ends in May till it begins again in the fall, we would try to fit all of that work into a summer, and that would need to be determined as well.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
In this process, can you prioritize? Because if you don't have the total amount identified, you should be able to probably commit maybe with some lower amounts. It might take longer. But if you've prioritized what's the most important to get changed, you can get started sooner.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I have not seen the needs assessment study. So I would like to see that and see what was recommended around, at that time, the newest and latest gadgets and technology. The other piece is you mentioned applications. Applications can mean, that word can mean a number of things, because in my world, when you say application, I think of apps. Could you explain when you use the term applications, are we looking at specific technology pieces of acoustics, or are we really talking about latest apps that are out there that can be used in different venues? I'm not sure.
No, we're not talking about phone apps or those
Okay.
kinds of applications. We're talking about technology that can be applied to the problem that results in the best solution for us. So there are many products, I use the term applications, but not in the term of phone apps, that can be used to acoustically and electronically affect the sound in the chamber without making physical changes to the chamber.
Okay.
So, Councilwoman, so let me try to, in more layman's terms, describe one of the challenges we have acoustically with Hall. Because of the design of the audience chamber, depending on where you're sitting in the hall, there would be some areas where the actual music or the sound projecting out, there are are flat spots. And so the sound is not as perfect as it could be, and that all depends on where you're sitting in the hall. There are electrical enhancements that can be done to remedy that situation. So those are the types of things that we're trying to resolve with this scope and with the study.
What would the cost of this study be?
Just to re-engage the consultant team, we estimate that would probably be in the range of $30,000.
Is that in the packet?
No.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So today's recommendation would to re-engage.
Correct, to re-engage the consultant team that we hired in 2015 to,
So before I vote on this, I would like to know the cost, in the sense of it be in the packet and be written, like when we vote on other items, as to the range will be this. No. So that's one of the challenges I have at this moment. Once we get this assessment, what are the next steps of this assessment? And what would that cost be?
I think it certainly is fair, Vice Mayor. Sometimes we pass things to the full council, obviously reserving the right to change our mind when policy is actually finished or votes are actually counted to move forward. Are you requesting to postpone this item, or are you willing to pass this item to the full council? And I think it's fair, with the understanding that information really should be in the packet and briefings be done and those kinds of things.
No, normally there is a cost associated to these assessments that we do and in subcommittee. And so, so yes, we can move it to the full council. I just anticipate it to be, to have the amount.
Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. So this scope of approximately $30,000, the consultant team is already on the city's engineering services contract list. So we would already have the ability to directly engage the consultant team since they're already on annual services contract. As far as the cost, we would handle that within the current convention center budget.
Okay, that's good information, and let's add that to the packet for, if should this pass from the subcommittee to the full council, I think it's a good idea to have that information in the packet for the general public as well, who picks up a packet, follows this item.
So do you want a motion to move this forward to full council, noting that that information be included in the council packet?
Councilwoman, I believe if the subcommittee acts, I don't, because the
Does it have to go to council?
consultant team's already on annual services, we'd be able to have the ability to directly engage them.
So if okay, so now I'm going to back up. If we already have the consultant, what I'm hearing is we already have the consultant, they're on a vendors list, and you have the ability to go and activate or go and choose that vendor or that consultant and start the re-engagement of this process. I guess my question would be, if you have the ability to do that,
So
why,
for clarification, I'm sorry,
go ahead,
I think we might be on the same
go ahead.
page here. For clarifications for those who are coming to a subcommittee meeting for the first time or watching for the first time, not understanding how the the council manager form of government works, if it is within a certain dollar figure, staff has that purview. If it's above that dollar figure, it absolutely has to be voted on. But if the fifth largest city in the country, think of how many votes we would have or how slow business would move forward if staff had to come forward before council every time there was any expenditure of any amount. And so if I'm hearing this correctly, $30,000 is within that amount, John?
Correct. And so we are seeking your concurrence and direction to move forward with re-engaging the consultant team under the current authority that the department has.
Okay.
I'm, Mr. Chair, we need a motion to do that, correct? Or we just,
Yeah,
I would
we need
think so.
action to move this to the full council,
Nope.
correct?
no, it doesn't go to the full
It
council.
doesn't go to the
because
council, that's
I
the
think we
thing, so I'm
just
not.
recently raised the limit that staff can do to 100,000. Is that correct, or something like this? So, is this included in your budget?
To re-engage the consultant team?
Yes.
Correct. Yes, we would handle it within the existing.
And you're only
Budget.
doing the consultant. You're not doing any of the actual work
No,
identified.
No, we
Well, I
would not be.
say move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second, but I have questions.
Sure, of course.
My
We have a motion
question
and a
is,
second. We'll move
my
on.
question is, if you have the ability to do that, and it's under the threshold of the dollar amount, I guess my question is, why is it at subcommittee? Because why do you need approval if it's 35,000 and it's under the 100,000 threshold? You have the ability to re-engage the consultant.
sure. Councilwoman, this is really the beginning of a dialogue with the subcommittee and ultimately the city council with, in conjunction with the resident companies. So this is really the first step in informing the subcommittee on the work that's been done so far and to have a discussion about how to proceed and to advance this to the next stage.
And to advance to the next stage, I'm automatically going to go by my gut to have this consultant and re-engage them. then to advance to the next stage, I'm assuming, and it's, you shouldn't assume under the four agreements, is that then it will come back in front of us. And then at that point, it will say it'll cost this much money, which I would agree with Councilwoman Williams, that you probably should have put them in rank order as to what needs to go first, second, or third. And then, I guess my next question would be, where's that money coming from?
So if, assuming that this is the scope and preliminary cost estimates are accurate, we don't have this is an unfunded project. So we would need to identify, work on the city's finance and budget departments to identify a funding source to accommodate these improvements.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, let me try to clarify. What we're trying to do today is just seek your direction to move forward, to re-engage the consultant, to take a look at the study that was done, I believe, 2 years ago, and look at what would need to be done today if we were going to move forward. To John's point, if we do move forward, we would have to come back, have identified funding to fund the project at whatever the cost is deemed by the consultants when they do the reevaluation. So we would eventually have to come back to subcommittee with what the consultants are saying, what we need to do in ranking order, and what that cost would be and where those funds are going to come from, in order for you, I believe, to feel comfortable to move that forward to full council. So right now, it's just looking at, with the consultant, what we need to do to upgrade.
Okay.
This has not reached the stage where it's a project.
Well,
in order-
it's
Good.
but it's a beginning stage. That's what I want to be very clear on. That someone is moving, this project is now, with our approval, going to start to be moved in order to have this dialogue. So I'm going back to, where will the funding coming from? We're facing a deficit in the future, or pretty soon, and we're re-engaging in a project that's going to cost us money. And so I'm just bringing the conversation to the forefront as we begin to start this dialogue. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good points. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There are no cards on this item. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on. Okay. Every month on this subcommittee for the last more than 2 years, we've had an FAA flight path update, and things are moving in the right direction, as we know. There are no cards on this item. If my colleagues are comfortable with this is a standing item on this agenda. If my colleagues are comfortable with this, we can move over to the next item, which I think many people are here for. Are we good with that?
Mhm.
All right, we'll invite Planning Office up. Group Home Working Committee Monthly Update.
Thank you, Chairman Valenzuela, members of the subcommittee. We will have just a brief update here. Ms. Hoffman will kind of provide an overview of what we've done the last couple of months and where we're going over the next month, 6 weeks. And then I will talk a little bit about a draft moratorium memo that is out there at the request of some of the community to look at a moratorium for group homes, and then we're happy to answer any questions. With that, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you. We've completed 3 out of the 5 meetings that we are going to be holding. We have modified our schedule slightly to help accommodate our consultant. So the next 2 meetings would be October 9th and then November the 7th. On October the 9th, we have 4 items on the agenda which will be open for discussion, including the good neighbor policies, operation standards and regulations, the transaction privilege tax overview, and parking issues and requirements. We anticipate then going in November the 7th to cover the data compilation and tracking, the state and federal constraints and considerations, and staff proposed recommendations. Because of the recommendations and the schedule being moved forward to November, we anticipate coming forward to the subcommittee with the recommendations in December. With that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Should we start with our cards?
Chairman Valenzuela, members of the subcommittee, real quick, I just want to provide a summary of a draft legal memo that the law department has done regarding moratoriums. And so Chairman Valenzuela and Councilwoman Stark held a meeting with some of the TAP, the Neighborhood Association group, which is Take Action Phoenix. They had requested that the city look into doing a moratorium on group homes until we get through this process and bring some changes back to the council. The law department did look at that and has put together a draft legal memo. They don't believe that it's legal to do a moratorium because that it violates the Federal Fair Housing Act. There was a court case that went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals where another city did do this, and they were found to be in violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act. And so the law department does not recommend that the mayor and council impose a moratorium. With that, we're happy to answer any questions, but I believe that there are some neighbors here who wish to speak directly to that point, and I'm sure others.
I'm sure. Okay, thank you. First speaker is Linda Colino. Of course. Are you sure you want to hear from Jeff Spellman first?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Valenzuela, Councilman Williams, and Vice Mayor Pastor. We appreciate your time. We first appeared before the DAEI subcommittee, and we showed you that certain neighborhoods are being institutionalized by the clustering of group homes. Now, we always refer to the Fair Housing Act and the ADA, and from the HUD and DOJ joint statement, they take the position that if a neighborhood came to be composed largely of group homes, that could adversely affect individuals with disabilities and would be inconsistent with the objective of integrating persons with disabilities into the community. So we appreciated that first meeting, subcommittee meeting. You directed the planning department to establish a working group to meet over the course of the summer to discuss potential solutions and to bring recommendations back to this subcommittee by the end of this year. To date, the working group meetings have focused almost solely on what various departments in the city can't do. Rarely has a bona fide suggestion of what could be done. So there's a lot of frustration in that working group meeting that we're not making progress. We're only being told things that can't happen. And that's just really not acceptable. The city hired a land use attorney who has successfully guided other cities, including Prescott, in drafting health and safety regulations. The consultant has suggested that licensing of all group homes is not only legal, but an effective means to ensure neighborhoods are protected. Now we're told that we won't even have a recommendation by the end of the year. I'd like you to ask staff exactly what having a staff proposal means in terms of drafting a new ordinance to regulate group homes and health and safety. So all the while this happens, planning and development continues to knowingly institutionalize our neighborhoods by processing applications and reasonable accommodations for group homes. Allowing planning and development to continue operating in such a manner is at best negligent to both the residents and the neighborhood. We still are requesting council impose a moratorium on group home applications until the new licensing regulations are in place. It's been done in other cities. Phoenix can do it too. If you can't, then let's hear how soon we're going to have a draft ordinance before this subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, well, next speaker, Ms. Colino, are you ready? Yes. All right. Linda Colino. And Vanna White, also known as Pam Fitzgerald. And Ms. Fitzgerald has donated her time to Linda Colino, so they'll get extra time.
Chairman, Councilwomen, my objective today is to give you or supply you with a visual evidence of what clustering or institutionalizing of a neighborhood looks like. On June 21st, 2017, Council approved hiring the consultant, Daniel Lauber, and who mentions in his May 2017 paper that clustering community residents, especially recovery residents, also known as group homes, on a block and neighborhood reduces their efficacy by obstructing their ability to foster normalization and community integration. Why clustering is so counterproductive? It's because placing community residents too close to each other can create a de facto social service district and can seriously hinder the ability to achieve normalizations for their residents. One of the core foundations of which the concept of community residence is based. I have a map here of an area, and I'll show you the borders here. Hold on. Over here is 19th Avenue. Over here is I-17. In between, we have 23rd Avenue and 21st Avenue. This is Northern, and this is Orangewood down here, okay? I have a little marker. This is 1,320 feet. This map is 1 to 100, 1 inch to 100 feet, okay? Now, I'm going to point out an area down here. This is Orangewood, and you see these little orange tabs, okay? Those are current, what we know of as being group homes, okay? Now, I'm going to put the marker on here. That's 1,320 feet, okay? See this little pink one down here? Right there? That is an application that is currently at Planning and Development for approval. When we went and got this information, their map had not one of these oranges on here, not one. And this information was gathered from multiple different sources. The sources being the Department of Health Services, the Maricopa County Assessor's Office, websites, searches done on sober living homes, group homes, and from our neighborhood leaders. We know who are in these orange spots. Now, you tell me that this is not clustering? What does that look like? That looks like clustering to me. Right in between here, there's two, and there's the approved one. Based on the map in Planning and Development, they're probably going to approve that one. Now, how many do we have on Orangewood? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And not even talking about this one over here. 8 within a 1,320-foot distance. This is what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent the institutionalizing. If anybody knows about the Willowbrook project, I just watched a video on it, and one of the things that 25 years later, they are afraid that Willowbrook will happen again. But it's not going to be exactly like Willowbrook. It's not going to be in one building. It's going to be in multiple, but it's going to be a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vanna, you're okay.
Of course, question.
Based on her map,
Want to keep the map up?
That's quite a visual there.
I'll just be, the cluster at the bottom,
Yes.
was that all approved by staff?
They don't know about them, Councilwoman.
So they didn't go through any process?
No. They
We
don't
didn't
have
have a
them.
Because there
process.
isn't I'm
That's
sorry.
what- No,
Councilman.
that's where I was headed.
Yes.
We didn't have a process to identify that along the way, right?
No.
Mayor and, I'm sorry, Chairman Valenzuela and council members.
I know we're confusing
Uh,
today.
Without more information, I can't answer that question directly because I think there's probably multiple things happening here. There's certainly, we look at all of the DHS data and DS data about whoever has a license as part of our analysis. I don't know if any of these ones don't have a license or didn't show up, as part of that. The other research we would have to look into, some of these may be homes that are 1 to 5, which don't count towards clustering because
That was my
those have
next
to be
question.
treated like a family. There may be other ones that could be sober living homes that are operating, that because there is no license requirement at the state, they just go in and open, and unless we get complaints, the city doesn't know about those particular locations. And I do know that, I believe, Ms. Colina has a meeting right now with one of my staff members to
Yes.
go over
Yeah.
the map, to look at the exact locations, so we can see what she's researching, so that we can come up with the latest and greatest and best information. And we won't approve that other one until we understand what's happening, if that's the case, or
Okay.
we'll deny it if there's evidence that it's clustering, and we can support that.
I appreciate it, and thank you.
You are very welcome.
Yeah.
Any more questions on the map? So Vanna can take it away.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
job.
Very good.
Great, Vanna.
Vanna has nothing on Pam Fitzgerald.
Like, what poster is she using?
W.M. Culbertson,
Here, right there.
thank you for being here, sir. Hey, if, I wouldn't want to follow Wally Graham, but if you're willing to do that. Yeah, no problem. Larry Whitesell. Okay, I'm fine with that. Okay, good. Well, the one and only, Paul Barnes. Mr. Barnes, you want to go last, or do you want to go next? All right, why don't we? Okay. We'll bring
Wally
up,
went back there to hide.
so Mr. Barnes, and then it'll be Mr. Graham, and we'll go down the line.
I don't want to follow anybody. You know, with old age, sometimes you kind of lose civility, and I'm old enough that I've lost some of my civility. And I do have to say that I think the administration of group homes in the city of Phoenix by the Planning and Development Department for a long time has not been satisfactory. And my situation has started back in 2015 in July, when they decided they would no longer enforce the zoning ordinance in respect to the 1,320 feet requirement. The ordinance didn't change. The 1,320 feet requirement for group homes of 6 and over didn't change. They just decided they wouldn't enforce it. And what happened in the neighborhood where I used to live, we had 2 homes less than 90 feet apart, over 6, on Cal Taberia. Okay, they just didn't enforce them. And the enforcement didn't come back until May of 2017. We've started this subcommittee, this group. Frankly, in my opinion, it's moving very slowly, and as the first speaker indicated, nothing much is really happening. And that's a shame, because you can see from this map what's happening, and this is happening all over the city, and Larry and Bill will talk some more about what's happening in their neighborhood. My particular concern is the lack of a new ordinance that we need very, very, very badly. And one of my prime concerns is the fact that for reasonable accommodation, the decision is made strictly by the planning director, or if there isn't an appeal, by one of his staff members. Given the history of what's happened with the Planning and Development Department, that is not correct. We need more people to participate in that. We need some sort of a public hearing process. That determination can't be made solely by the planning director or his staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here as always, Mr. Barnes. Okay, Mr. Wally Graham.
Wally Graham. I'm a member of Take Action Phoenix. And most of what I'm going to say is iterative, quite frankly. Jeff Spellman gave you most of what it is we're concerned about. Paul just gave you the other part of what we have a concern about, and that's why we're asking for consideration for a moratorium. And that is that the Planning and Development Department does not have enough information currently to enforce the current ordinance. Ordinance number G6331 that was passed on June 21st of this year, as a matter of fact, is published incorrectly. And right now it uses arterial streets as one of the criteria for separation. When we went along with supporting the text amendment back in June with both this committee and with the full city council, arterial streets were supposed to have been pulled out as a barrier for separation. That ordinance that's published up on the website is currently incorrect. It says arterial streets can be used as a reasonable accommodation consideration. That was not what was supposed to be published. That was not what we agreed to. And I just want to add, besides that incorrect publication of the ordinance, we're asking for a moratorium because the city of Phoenix cannot accurately tell you how many group homes are in any neighborhood in this city. You can tell, they can tell what's registered with the state, but quite frankly, we're trying to get a moratorium in place because we believe that you all acting on incorrect information will not help us with getting group home residents or neighborhoods protected. You will find just in the next testimony that at 1930 East Glendale Avenue, and that's a case that is currently being considered by the Planning and Development Department. They've already heard a pre-app. There is a developer who is not disabled, who is not at this point registered, will want to put two group homes next to one another at 1930 East Glendale Avenue. The city is currently considering that application. They've heard the pre-app, and they are not raising any objections to those two group homes being placed next door to one another. We're saying, let's get a moratorium in place until the council can pass the ordinance. And we were told that the ordinance would be considered for council publication, or I'm sorry, vote in the first week of December. Now we're being told that's not going to happen. What TAP is really concerned about is all of a sudden now we're being told nothing will happen. So we're saying, let's put a moratorium in place just to slow this process down just a little bit. It's not about being against group homes. This is really, truly about making sure the council can pass a sufficient ordinance to do the work it has to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Now I have this right, Larry Whitesell, right?
I'm William Culbertson.
Yeah, no, I know, but I knew there was an order here. I totally screwed it up. Mr. Culbertson, thank you so much for being here.
Members of the council, let me build upon what Mr. Graham said and give you a little bit more fact and history about this project at 1930 East Glendale. This is a real-life example. If there is not a moratorium, irreparable harm is going to occur. All council members heard an application to rezone that property on March 22nd. By a vote of 7-2, the application to rezone was denied. Throughout the process, the attorney for the developer, at least one member of the Village Planning Committee, and at least one member of the Planning Committee all said that this property is unsuitable for residential use. Now the proposal is to put it in high-volume residential use. Throughout the process, neighbors, including me, receive threats from the developer that if you don't do what we want, then we're going to make it really uncomfortable for you. I'll just read you 2 sentences of one such email. Quote, "I wish you were able to attend the Planning Commission hearing. Before our case was heard, there was a half-hour discussion regarding group homes and what a nuisance they are to neighbors and neighborhoods." This is from the same developer who now proposes to put in group homes, one 6,000 square feet and another sober living home of 4,000 square feet. The process is being abused, and it's being abused to the detriment of the neighbors. That is why a moratorium is required. Not only did this happen, and the council was informed of many of these actions on March 22nd, but right after you folks voted, the developer turned to prominent Phoenix attorney Gary Stewart and said to him, your neighbors are going to be really sorry what I'm going to build now. Mr. Stewart was so upset by it that night he emailed the mayor's staff and told them what happened. He put it in quote. He said, "I take this for what it is. It's a threat." And Mr. Stewart went on to conclude that he wanted his email to remain on file because it looks to me like the developer is looking for someone to punish. He found who he wants to punish. It's the neighbors who had the temerity to come in and contest his application. In conclusion, if we have a process in which neighbors cannot come in and appear before the council and in good faith oppose without retaliation, then we have lost a democracy. I ask you to impose a moratorium. If not, there's irreparable harm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir? Who's the developer?
His name is Shane Alexander, and he operates a company, I believe it's called Abco.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Whitesell.
Thank you.
When you get those emails, could you just go ahead and forward to all of us?
I'm sorry, I did not hear
When you
you.
get those types of emails, could you just forward
We're
them?
going to provide them right now.
Well, as
In
you
the future
receive
as
them,
well, if you could.
forward it to our council offices.
Thank you. Great suggestion. Mr. Whitesell.
Thank you, Chairman Valenzuela and subcommittee members. We are concerned, and we do really believe that a moratorium until the full council can act on the text amendment would be beneficial not only to us as residents, but also to the operators of group homes who have presented to you their concerns. They are concerned about what they called and what you called at the meeting on June the 7th, the subcommittee meeting on June 7th, bad actors. You'll see I've underlined some key words and phrases from Mr. Alexander's emails. And Vice Mayor Pastor, you'll recall this is the gentleman who had spoken about the Madison School Board.
Right.
And you kind of called him out on his misstatement?
Yeah, that's why I was
That's
like,
the
I
one.
know this name.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
that is why you know his name. You brought up the subject of bad actors, and we believe that this gentleman is a bad actor based on the comments after the council meeting on March the 2nd when his rezoning was denied, based on everything that he did leading up to the rezoning, including misrepresentation at the council meeting. We also learned through a public records request that 2 of his employees submitted emails supporting the rezoning to City Council and to the mayor using addresses of neighbors who live in our neighborhood, and they don't live there at all. They are a project manager for Mr. Shane Alexander and an architect for Mr. Shane Alexander, who now is Mrs. Shane Alexander. They were married on May 8th, we found out through Facebook. So we believe that we're dealing with a bad actor in our neighborhood. And we would like to ask you to ask the city attorney to look closely at the Ninth Circuit Court. Usually court actions are very limited in scope, and I believe, based on Mr. Spellman's testimony, that there is a way to provide a moratorium that would be compatible with the best interests of not only the neighbors, but also the city and the operators of group homes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have other cards that I'd like to read off. Those who wish to not speak, but you can always change your mind. Beverly Chapman, Mark opposed, I'm assuming is sharing the same sentiment. And Patterson, John Chapman, Larissa Balderrama, and of course, Pam Fitzgerald. Okay. This is a monthly item. We committed to that. We said that we would have a conversation. We keep the conversation going. It's not an actionable item at this point. I do have a request for our staff, and Ellen. This is valuable input, obviously, and their email and people will continue to come out and continue to be heard. I'd like to find out how we can incorporate some of the public comment into the existing reasonable accommodation process now, if possible. And I certainly would like to allow for additional comments, like the ones we heard today and what's going to come up next month, and those and so on, to be considered before the director makes any final determination. Now, that's not actionable. It is a request, and because we can't vote on that necessarily, but I mean that's a request and direction to staff. And Ellen, is that doable?
Chairman Valenzuela, yes, staff will look at how we could try and incorporate some, some public involvement and input into the reasonable accommodation process.
Okay, and we can do that this is valuable input. It's going to continue. Otherwise people show up. They're not being heard. Why would they show up? And we have committed people who are taking time away from work, life appointments, and so on. So, and I appreciate your willingness to continue to work through this process. I was able to share with the TAP group that, so I represent the city of Phoenix at the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. So 91 cities and towns are are made up of this organization, and I have the honor to represent Phoenix. And so in our last meeting, this is a couple of months ago now, it feels like it's been a couple of months, 6 weeks ago, I made a motion, and it was supported to help sponsor a bill or to support a bill that would help mitigate this issue that we are dealing with at a local issue. I mean, what came about this conversation is at the end of the day, we don't have many tools. And what you just said about, the city attorney mentioning the fact that they feel like it's illegal to do a moratorium. Well, what's the answer? That map is pretty scary. And it's not even real time. I mean, who knows what's being done out there today? So we have to try to stay ahead of it and make sure that this is counting for something. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. Any other questions or comments by my colleagues?
I have tons of questions.
All right.
So should I just rattle them
Sure.
off?
Yeah.
Wally Graham mentioned arterial streets. I would like staff to go back and look to see what's on the website and what is correct and incorrect. I guess my question to staff, because it was 2015, why did we stop enforcing the 1,300, feet, or is it
320 feet.
20 feet? So I would like an answer to that. And then who made the decision to quit enforcing? And then I would like to see the committee to move faster, and I would like to see a text amendment or something to us before December. And the reason why I'm pushing is because I have been sitting on several committees, and we have produced many things within a matter of the summer months. And I will give an example of fast track, and we've already presented it to the council. So I think we can probably move a little faster and get something out into the community and within the city. And then I guess this is a sixth item. Explain to, I get it, I needed some clarity on why we can't do a moratorium. I understand people are saying it's illegal, but
Please, yeah, because this is information that's come out. We've been working pretty closely, and so Ellen, if you want to offer your response.
Certainly, Chairman Valenzuela, Councilman Pastor, you will have to, website does reflect that the incorrect ordinance, which was the old language, was signed, and that's what shows up on the website. But that's not what is legally enforceable, because it's not what council enacted. Council enacted the correct language. The ordinance is in the process of being fixed as we speak, just by way of clarifying that it was a Scribner's error. The council approved the correct language. It just got a different version, earlier version signed, but that's not the action that council took. So the law department has reviewed that and approved that, and it's a matter of just having that correct one signed and the website updated. But in the meantime, staff has approved, and all of our handouts are based upon the correct ordinance that council adopted, which is those other removing arterial streets, the park site to 10 acres, those things.
so what I'm hearing is there's been a mistake.
Yes, there was.
Throughout all of that, there's a mistake. It went up onto the website, or what's up on the website is wrong. It needs to be changed. We passed the right ordinance with the language of the arterial streets, and
Without the arterial street language. So the
Without.
language that was passed by council strikes arterial streets. And that is what the staff has correctly been applying. It's what's in the handout. It was in the backup material that council voted upon. The incorrect ordinance, which was an earlier version, was the one that got published on the website, and that's what's being fixed.
so I'm hearing then arterial streets that language was struck out.
Right.
So then now I'm hearing, or what I'm going to ask is, what do we need to do to bring it back and relook at it and see if we can include arterial streets? Strike out arterial streets.
Yeah. Chairman Valenzuela, Councilwoman Pastor, the street language is not in it today. You don't have to do anything else.
Okay.
Council took the correct action.
Okay.
There was a Scribner's
I'm getting-
error afterwards that then
Okay.
got published on the web of the older version.
Okay, so I'm getting confused. So we did do the right action.
Correct.
All right. That is not up on the website.
Right.
So we could probably quickly correct that.
Yes.
Okay.
Staff is working on,
Okay.
we've submitted the information to the law department and then to the city manager's office to make those, to do that correction.
And how quickly do you think we can do that?
Well, I will go back and follow up just after this meeting to see where it's at in the process. The TAP neighbors, I think, raised that issue maybe 2 weeks or so ago, and so staff did the research and then submitted the paperwork to fix that, and so it should be pretty close, but we'll double check.
So could I anticipate by next Friday?
I would say so, yes. Yeah.
And the
It should
website will be correct?
It'll be correct as well.
Thank you.
You also asked for some additional information on moratoriums. And so part of what the law department went through is an analysis of where some other moratoriums have been enacted in other jurisdictions, and analyze whether or not that was something they thought that the city could legally do. And as part of that analysis, one of the key cases they looked at went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which in Arizona, if someone was to file a lawsuit against the city, we would end up at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And in that case, there was a city in Newport that lost a case where they imposed a one-year moratorium on establishing or operating group homes. In that case, the court found that the moratorium singled out group homes for adverse treatment, and they had to not do the moratorium because of that legal decision. And so that is a court decision that binds us because we're in the Ninth Circuit in terms of having to look at what that decision was. And so I think that is probably the gist of it. I'm sure that there are some other legal nuances that would be best explained by the law department if you wanted to have some specific information regarding that.
Yes.
So we can set up
because that's a moratorium for a year. I'm not really sure if the community is asking for a year, so I think there needs to be clarity on that. There are items that are moving currently that we know are going to affect a neighborhood or a community. And so I think the question that's being raised is, at this moment, how do we handle that due to the fact we're in the process of moving all these other pieces and we're still in the process of moving possible legislation? How in the fact when we're in the middle of this bubble, I say we're in the middle of bubbles because action is happening and we're trying to get there. There are people now in the middle that there's no enforcement, there's no language. What happens to that? And I think that's where the neighborhood is coming from at this moment, because effects could happen to the neighborhood currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to figure out how we manage that piece. That's why I'm asking for a lot of this stuff to move faster, to move forward, so that we can understand and be proactive and move the way we need to move. I think I would like legal. I would prefer to have legal, planning department, and those that are in this process and the TAP community to come together to understand what they are requesting as a moratorium. I think maybe we're using the wrong language, but that might be the semantics. So that's one of the ways I think we need as a group to come together to understand it legally.
So if I can sum that up, because I think you're right, and I think the sentiment is shared, what can be done? And so that's what we've been working toward as well, which is a great point.
But but
If
it's
not
like
the
now.
moratorium, and I get it, if it's not the moratorium, maybe, okay, if that's not it, legal issues,
What is the legal process that we can do?
there are some,
Yeah.
there's a point, what can be done now? What can we do?
Chairman Valenzuela, Councilwoman Pastor, I think in terms of, I think what you're asking is to have staff have a meeting with, with TAP, with the law department, and we can
And the
include our consultant as well, who's an attorney and outside expert, and have a discussion about the moratorium issue, so that we can all sit around and see if there's something of what can be done and be legally supported. And then we can talk about that at our meeting next month if that's the case. In terms of one of your other questions you had about what's coming back and timing and all of that, the staff is working, and even though we have not presented a lot of information, we've been collecting a lot of information about what we think we can do to make a presentation so that we can come forward by the end of the year has always been our goal with some recommendations. The challenge is that some of those recommendations and what will come out of that are going to be things that the council is going to have some substantive debate about, and then decide which avenue should they direct staff to go. For example, we are looking at a license program that we now believe that we can require a license for all group homes. And what we would do as part of that process is say, if you have a license from the state, then show us your state license. You've met that requirement. You don't have to meet our requirements. But if you don't have a state license, here's the requirements that you would have to meet. As part of that, the enforcement would fall on the city regarding that license, because the state, again, is the only group home they don't regulate is sober living homes. They have license requirements for all the other group homes, so then that regulation of those would fall on the city. And we're trying to ascertain where's the balance point between what staff can legally enforce and what staff can practically enforce with the existing staff that we have, and not incur more costs, because we know that the budget situation is really tight in that area. So that's one of the things that will come back, and council will have to then kind of make some larger policy choices around what we do for those info.
I agree with you on that. And it's up to us as policymakers to be able to have that debate and to make those decisions and provide guidance. We just need to get it in front of us. So I'm asking for it to get in front of us quickly so that we can move stuff. And we can make then those decisions at that moment as to, what is needed, what is the impact and importance of moving that type of policy. So I'm just asking, can we get it in front of us sooner?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, I understand, and we will see what we can do regarding the consultant and the group, and try and work to move things forward sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's just
You need some lessons on how to move some stuff forward. I would suggest go to Deputy Jovanovich's group and the special projects, because they move things very quickly.
And she always has plenty of time, apparently. Joking. All right.
Just
You are a
joking.
doer, though. Okay, so.
So is Alan.
Well, absolutely. I think so, too. Absolutely. Thank you for all the effort. Thank you, everyone, for showing up on this. And obviously, the dialogue's going to continue. Great suggestion by getting emails sent to us so that we can be part of that dialogue as it's happening as well. Okay, moving on to the next item. It's the public comment. We have no cards. Future agenda items. Any requests? Chris?
This is, we're
Good.
gonna, yeah, I'm fine.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.